right, I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove Village Board of Trustees to order. It is Monday, June 19th at 6:30 p.m. on my watch. We are holding this as a hybrid meeting, meaning we are in Village Hall as well as on Zoom. There is a Zoom link at the top of the agenda, and there's also an audio call-in for those that choose to do so. With that, we have a quorum. The agenda was properly posted, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. The United States of America, and to the republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, then, we have public appearances. This is public's opportunity to speak. We do have a few folks that filled out forms, at least that would like to share those, but I'll start with anybody from the public who would like to speak. We just ask that you share your name, your address, your municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes in case we have a lot of folks who want to talk. So with that, either in the room or on Zoom, I'll wait for anybody to raise their hand. Okay. All right, then wish to speak forms that were completed. Representative Ratcliffe, who does in the village. She just wanted to recognize Pride Month and Juneteenth and continue to encourage the village to raise our Pride progress and Juneteenth flags in symbol of inclusivity and equality in Cottage Grove. Then next then we have Catherine Check from Madison. Didn't wish to speak, just wanted to share support for the library. Writing again to support the library in Cottage Grove. They're Madison residents. They enroll in MG and spend a lot of time in Cottage Grove. I think it would be really nice to have that amenity here. And next, Larry Schuneman from resident of Cottage Grove. Again, did not wish to speak. Wanted the village board to keep the library on the 10-year prioritization plan. At this point, spending thousands of dollars on piecemeal programs. Let's do what's good for the community and build a public library. So that's what Larry had to share. So with that, we'll move then to discuss and consider our meeting minutes from our regular board meeting held on June 5th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
First from Heidi, second from David. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, we'll slide right into the presentation to the board. This is a presentation from FGM Architects regarding Emergency Services Station Number 2 and a site feasibility and space needs study. Andrew. You might want to grab the mic too and try to find a home somewhere on there. And don't do a mic drop. I don't think anybody on the Zoom would appreciate that.
All right. Hello, everyone. Andrew Mayo from FGM Architects, for those who don't know me, but I feel like I know pretty much everybody in the room at this point. Here today to talk about site feasibility for Emergency Services Station 2. I'll be short and sweet, but feel free to jump in with any questions. So first off, we were charged with taking a look at space needs, programming, concept plan, concept site plan, and budget for this particular site on Landmark Drive, owned by the village, for an emergency services station, satellite station, either potentially for the future or for the much closer future, but I think that's to be determined by another study. So first off, we took a look at the space needs of an emergency services satellite station, understanding that the short-term need would be a single ambulance, with the longer-term need potentially growing into a second bay. So as you can see here, totals out to just under 6,500 square feet for a satellite EMS station. And just as a conceptual example, this is one potential option for what the floor plan would look like. The dark blue is the sleeping quarters. The lighter blue is the living quarters, then with some mechanical and support spaces, and with the apparatus bay. And you can see all the way to the far right, there's the option for a future apparatus bay. We made sure that you could fit that all in this site. So here's a site plan. Again, just one option. If this was taken further into design, we could look at other potential options and further explore what apparatus exactly would be housed here, as well as how much staff parking, how much public parking, all of that. But this just shows that all of the typical site requirements for a satellite station would fit on this site, and the site is feasible for a satellite EMS. Then we come to the budget. So as you can see, construction, soft costs, and contingency are the first three line items. That last line item is basically saying, if you were to start design today, we'd most likely be bidding out sometime in the fall of '24. And in order to better understand what the total cost would be, we need to escalate out to that date, because as we know, construction costs have gone crazy recently. They're slowing the craziness, but they still are increasing with really no signs of getting back down to that 3% or so that we usually carry in our budgets. So we've carried the equivalent of 12.5% per year for the construction costs, coming in at 562, with a total of just over $5 million for the construction. So, like I said, I'm going to be short and sweet. So, talking about some potential next steps, I understand that you've got PAA working on analysis of some proposals for potential future services. So, obviously, you would need to vet those and determine what your future service looks like. And if it's the case that you've decided you need a new emergency services satellite station, then we would look at an architect and engineer contract. Design would be roughly 9 to 12 months. Construction would be another 12 to 16 months. All of those are still hypothetical, all contingent on who wins the bid and what they're saying their construction schedule would look like based on lead times and everything like that. So that's all I have. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew from the board?
Hi. My question is just around the overall location of the actual land.
Sure.
And the in and out, and do you guys have an opinion on if that land where it's located is a good location?
So from a response time perspective, it would absolutely augment the response time from Station 1, as well as be adequate if it was the only station in the village. This site in particular, there would have to be some adjustments to landmark in order to accommodate ingress and egress to this site in both directions. The good thing that you have going is once you get out to Cottage Grove Road, there is a signal there. That potentially could be, and JJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if that signal is already set up for emergency priority or not, but that would be something that you could then adjust that signal for emergency priority, and they could get in and out quickly through that signal. Yeah, where it's located in the village is centralized enough that it provides adequate service response time, and the immediate ingress and egress is definitely suitable for the use.
Other questions?
I just had a question on, so this would show the expansion, the full, so you'd have room for 4 vehicles to be parked in those 2 bays?
It depends on what the vehicles are.
Sure.
So you can see in the first planned bay, we're showing 2 ambulance rigs. In that second bay, we're showing a ladder truck. Granted, it may or may not be a ladder truck, so it could be an engine and a chief's vehicle or something like that, where, and again, it wouldn't necessarily have to be as long as it is if you're only one engine. So that's really just us saying there is the ability in the future to build a second bay.
Okay. And then the cost estimate that you provided is just that first bay?
Does not include the second, correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right, next then we'll move down to unfinished business, discuss and consider 2023 process for prioritization of non-capital related initiatives.
Yeah, so this is really just, if we want to go through with this process, I guess the board figuring out, like, how do we want to, do we want to stick with the old 20-point system that, you know, I think certainly has some flaws to it, or do you want to try something different altogether? And then, you know, there's doing the process, to even consider doing the process at all, should think through the optics of how it looks, because a lot of things get nominated, and then if they're don't ultimately receive points, but they're important items, it doesn't look great. You know, like, not saying it wouldn't get ranked high, but, you know, fiscal responsibility for one, because, you know, you have public safety, road maintenance, library services, you go on, there's a whole bunch of things, economic development, housing, fiscal responsibility, but there's only so many points to go through, and then if something like that ends up real low, what does that say, you know? So it's kind of thinking through, how does this look? You know, there's no requirement to do it. Certainly on the capital side of things, decisions have to be made, but on the operational side, you know, the resources get allocated in the budget, and there's much less debate about how that plays out. From a resources standpoint, I mean, public safety is number one every time. So, you know, it's kind of like, if that doesn't get ranked high, I don't know. So there's definitely a lot of different ways to go about it, but just something to consider. And then in the email I sent you, Chris had a good idea about if we're going to stick with the 20 points, maybe there's was it a maximum amount, Chris, that you were thinking allowable? So, you know, you couldn't put all 20 on one item, because then basically one board member could, you know, 20 points would put almost any item near the top no matter what. So maybe capping it at 4 or 6 points or something like that. But
And maybe we don't even do any points. Maybe we just say, these are the priorities that we think we should have as a board member. So you share that with your other colleagues and leave it at that. And that helps then, you know, staff at least know what people are thinking about when it comes to priorities.
yeah,
I was just thinking that similar thing, if we're communicating to our constituents what we want to work toward on the board, and each of us individually has, you know, contributions to that. And I wouldn't mind doing away with the point system.
I think I'd vote for keeping it the way it has been. I think what's been interesting is that now we're removing the capital side of things. And so I'd be interested to see how does that change? Because over the last couple of years, it's been a mix of capital and OpEx. And so, you know, and it, like you said, and then there's also the element of like fiscal responsibility. Like that's just, we all inherently have to do that, right? And I think that if I had any feedback on top of that would be, in years past, we've submitted our priorities, we all vote on them. I think I would shoehorn a step in the middle where we talk about what's on the list so that we can have I would like to have more conversation about what's on the list. But I think, as far as point systems, I think 20 points is fine and see what happens. I mean, it's a tabletop exercise at the end of the day, so I don't think we have to make a federal case out of how different it has to be. It's just us telling our constituents, hey, here's what we think is important. Here's, as a collective, here's how we voted on it. And I think a lot of people make more out of that prioritization process than probably even we do. And so I think that's what's led to some of the confusion. But I think we should do the points, but I think we should also have a second step where we talk about it.
So one of the other difficulties now, shifting capital away from operating, is we know with levy limits that we have $1 million deficit in a few years. So anything that we put on for operating that's anything new just adds to a deficit. So, you know, it just, you know, it's an exercise we can do, but it's kind of an exercise in futility.
Larry?
So Rick and I get to watch this happen in various communities. And I thought that what Matt sent out, was it late last week, that had the input from a couple people who had responded to date, sort of illuminated what might be a good process, that it's about timing, that as we go into budget and CIP development, sort of the phase of the year, that it seems to me that it would be worthwhile to just ask for non-prioritized, for the reasons that Matt said, just sort of, what are you thinking about? What do we want to, what are the things that we want to keep in mind as we go through making decisions about how to use the resources of the community? And then have the conversation, as David said, about that, to sort of set the table for how you'll then process the budget. That'll give guidance to the staff as to how to prepare the draft budget. But it seems to me that connecting sort of broader goals with what comes out the other end in two products, which is the operating budget and the CIP, it seems like there's a natural flow to that. But there should, you know, and there was some opinions expressed last time this was discussed, that it is important for board members to be able to do something that shows sort of what they're aiming for. And that's important to some people, and there's no reason why it can't be part of the process. It's just about making those priorities then turn into decisions. And the decisions are your operating budget and your CIP. And so to me, it's sort of a natural tier if you time it appropriately, or natural flow if you time it appropriately, so that that guidance can be incorporated into the thought process of creating the draft budget and the draft CIP. Can you turn that off?
Any other comments? Everybody needs a little help. Any other comments from board members? We have a couple folks saying not to even do the prioritization numbers. A couple folks saying do the prioritization numbers. What do the rest of the folks think?
I would keep the numbers. It just helps us align as a group, I think. And so I'd be for keeping the point system.
Okay.
Are we able to rank them and then just not put the numbers on the website, or is that like a?
Yeah, you guys can do whatever you want to do. It's that there's no requirement to do, you know, you could, it's totally up to you guys.
Because like we said, like the fiscal responsibility is a priority, but like it doesn't get any points. That doesn't mean it's not a priority. I don't know.
I think that's why I mentioned we talk about it before we vote on it, because, I mean, you were new last year, right? So like you put that on because, again, the whole process was Matt wasn't gonna give us any instruction, so you're just gonna, I don't know, like, I'm just gonna put, like, it makes sense, right? And so then you put it on, and then none of us vote for it, and now it looks like we don't care about fiscal responsibility, which couldn't be farther from the truth.
Right.
Right, so I'm like, in my mind, that's showing the public the process. Like, you can publish everything, I think showing the point value is fine, but I think that in conversations with residents, they're like, well, you guys clearly don't care about it because you didn't put any points. I'm like, well, that's not true either. So it's like, I think we could show, and actually, I think, Vince, I think maybe you put fiscal in the draft. Like, we all, I mean, you know, you've talked to all of us, like, we all care about it, right? But like, in terms of voting for that, I don't have to vote for that because that's already that's a table stake, right? Like, we already care about that, right? But it's like, in terms of the budget process, you know, we clearly care about fiscal responsibility, but like, what gets, you know, a bigger slice of the pie, right, when it comes to budgeting. So like, that's how I look at this, is really just the beginning steps of the budget process. So I think it's okay to show the process and say, like, hey, we did have fiscal responsibility, and then we just, to me, it's a communication issue, just explaining, like, hey, you know, ultimately when we voted on this, it's I don't know. I'm just tired of having to explain, I do care about fiscal responsibility, and that's what, I don't feel like I have to put points to it.
What if instead of assigning a point total, we just, it might be more work for us, but we could just rank them all, each of us. And then I assume we're not all gonna rank the same thing last.
Mhm.
So that way it could show that some things are more of a priority or whatnot. I mean, it might end up being 20 things, which would be work for us, but that might prevent things from not getting ranked at all by people.
I wonder if we couldn't have like core values, because I think fiscal responsibility applies to all of these things.
Mhm.
And when I look at the list, Chris, that you put together, which thank you, Chris, you've been putting together some ideas. Only really big one in there that's even budget related is the village. Other ones like housing, development ordinances, doing due diligence, public safety work, seem more project-based, but not necessarily that would inform the operating budget. And so I agree, I think it would be good to inform the budget. When I look at the actual list, and Vince made your list of capital things, right, that would go on this other prioritization process. Just gives me pause that really the only thing in there, operational budget-wise so far is the library, so. I'm not sure how much it would help inform.
Again, I think you're jumping to the step two, right? Like, we're already talking about it. Like, on this list for what Chris and Vince put together, it's really just the library that helps inform the budget. The rest of it's like, you know, Chris, I'm sorry to pick on you, but like economic development, like that's a table stake. Like, we're all looking for economic development.
What if you invest in another person that does economic development? Or you talk about public safety, what if we decide to hire more police officers or whatever? There's a whole list of underneath that are all operating related that will impact prioritization.
I guess I agree with you, but I'm gonna go back to what Matt said, in that it's highly unlikely that we would do that. You could lobby for it. I mean, you as a board member, you could say, hey, I think we should have somebody on staff that does economic development, but knowing where the levy's at.
I'm just saying that's,
Yeah.
those are things. So you can't just say it's one item out of the list that the two members provided. Every one of those has a operating impact. Every single one. Because you can make a decision. Maybe you're gonna shrink your police department.
I guess, again, it comes down to the conversation, right? Like, and Chris, sorry, I keep picking on you, but like, housing, like, it's a generic statement, right? Like, I guess all I'm lobbying for is more specific.
Absolutely.
More specific priorities, right? And like how it can impact the budget. We're talking about the same thing. I think I'm just looking for more specificity.
So we're keeping the 20 points. We're gonna get those to Matt. And then we'll have a follow-up conversation about how each of us rank the items that we put out. Am I gathering that correctly?
It sounds like a motion to me.
And that was always part of the process
Yeah.
before too.
So maybe we talk about how we rank them then, rather than just talking about like the top 3 or 5 or what, I don't,
Well,
we're just gonna talk about more of it, or?
Does anybody have anything to add, I guess? Is that, or maybe I just haven't seen it. I mean, it would be
Yeah,
nice
just
to have
fine.
one.
I received some more today, I just
list.
didn't have a chance to,
Okay.
to get it out to everybody.
So before next meeting, then we're gonna, is that in a month, right, 4 weeks is our next meeting? Because we don't have
A month
3rd
from
of
now.
July, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So are you thinking, David, maybe just have like the comprehensive list at that meeting before everyone allocates points?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes. Just so we can catch the fiscal management. Not that that's a bad one. Not saying it's bad. But I mean, like, again, I can distinctly
Food
remember.
security was one.
Yeah, food security is another one, right? Like, it's important to us, but like, how does it impact the budget? Can it impact the budget? And is anybody gonna put any points on it? Like, I feel like, just, this will be my 3rd go-around, I just feel like there should be some conversation. And maybe there was conversation, I just felt like we never took anything off the list, right? Like, a lot of times we get this list and like, it feels like you're taking pot shots at points, right? So you have a tendency to put more to what you put in, right? Because again, to Heidi's point, that's your priority, so you're gonna give it more points. But I think if we sit down a month from now, or at the second, or the only meeting we're gonna have next month, we look at everything we have, and then we can kind of talk about, well, I think this is important, or I think we should word this a different way, or we can go through the list, refine it, and then, you know, come to an agreement on the list, and then, you know, leave the next meeting, assign the points, and then we can kind of talk about it. So that'll be the 3rd time we've talked about it, be the 1st meeting in August.
Okay. So we would curate the list together
Yeah.
after folks submit their ideas. Okay, thanks.
And that would be helpful for me too, because I try to combine some that appear similar, but I don't want to speak, and I never want to combine something that, you know, maybe one board member's like, no, I want that a standalone on its own. So I don't want to just assume that, because I think something is similar, that it should be combined. I know that was kind of an issue when everything was combined before with capital, for instance, and, you know, if we're talking about library programming, there's a big difference between library programming and build a new library altogether, and those were getting put in the same bucket. So I think having this separated out will probably help.
All right, everybody have their assignments, their homework, if they haven't done it yet? I don't know if we need a motion on this, do you? Larry? No? Yes? No? Okay. All right. More to come on that. New business then. First, starting off, discuss and consider proclamation designating the July as Parks and Recreation Month. You want to handle that one?
Sure. This, we wanted to get in front of the board this meeting, because our next meeting won't be until after Parks Committee, until then we'll meet in July. So, yeah, designation of July as Parks and Recreation Month. It's a pretty straightforward proclamation.
Is July this kind of the standard month that communities are picking, or?
Sean isn't here this evening, so I'm not sure if
I was just
anyone
curious.
has any.
I don't want to put you on.
It might be a national.
The proclamation says U.S. House designated it as Parks Month, so I
All right.
assume it is.
There we go. Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve the proclamation designating July as Parks and Recreation Month.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next then, discuss and consider authorizing staff to apply for the 2023 absent absentee ballot envelope subgrant program through the Wisconsin Election Commission. Lisa?
Thanks, John. There was a memo in the packet. We just have an opportunity to apply for a grant through the Wisconsin Election Commission. We would be allocated $670.77 for new absentee envelopes that will be used for 2024, and we cannot use our old supply, which we only have that much, so we're in good shape.
Lisa, how much, I mean, I absolutely approve going for this, this grant. What is $670 actually gonna cover?
It will cover the expense of the absentee envelopes that we have to order. I don't know, because this is a redesign of what they're going to look like, and there's gonna be more color to it, so that it highlights more of the areas that people need to complete, because that's been an issue. It also will conform with the US Postal System mailing, so that it looks like official mailing, although it said that before, but it's gonna be more highlighted, so that it's more conducive to other states, so the US Postal System knows and people are aware that these are official ballots for elections. So as far as how much we will get for the $670, I can't really tell you, because I don't know what the costs are gonna be going forward for the new envelopes, just because the printers don't have it. The commission, I believe, is meeting in August, don't quote me on that, to make their final decision on the design, and then it will go to the printer. So I could report back once I have that, but I'm guessing that it's going to be more than what we currently pay.
Okay, thanks.
Will we for sure get that amount? Is it just mostly a formality, or
We will for
Are there-
sure get that amount.
there's no denying those applications?
As long as the application is filled out
Okay.
correctly, yeah, and we follow, and we have to follow up and keep all the paperwork for it, because it is a federal grant for a period of time. But yes, that
Okay.
would be our allocation.
Any other questions?
Make a motion then to authorize staff to apply for the 2023 absentee ballot envelope sub-grant program through the Wisconsin Election Commission.
Second.
Got a motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next then, we have discuss and consider ordinance 04-2023, amending chapter 239, canvassers and translation merchants. Boy, can't talk tonight. Which was in our packet.
So this ordinance just makes a couple additions to this relatively new ordinance based on some recognized needs on actual events that are being held in the community. And we added, we've done this now, since we adopted this overall ordinance here, we've added these kinds of provisions in other communities to just allow some flexibility where there's a department of the village that's hosting something, whether it's the PD or the village itself, and also to create an opportunity for the Chamber of Commerce to do events to simplify that process. So it's a fairly simple set of changes, but that's what's before you today.
Thanks, Larry.
Larry, question, how does the Chamber of Commerce fit in with the edits? It talks about it being a village event or hosted by a village department.
So the second section is all about the Chamber of Commerce. It's basically creating a separate host permit for the Chamber of Commerce. The current ordinance authorizes host permits, but it's only for businesses with a physical location in the village. Like, we were always talking about the distillery when we adopted this ordinance, when you adopted this ordinance, that, they like to have food trucks routinely, and they can kind of police who's there and how good the quality is, because it's part of their business, right? Rather than somebody just running around the community street to street. So that was the idea behind the host permit, and this would just give the opportunity to the chamber to get its own host permit and then to do village-approved events at village-approved sites. And JJ or somebody wants to talk about the particular examples that we're sort of responding to, I think that would help illuminate it too.
Just to clarify, I was more I thought that we were just voting on the change in red in the packet, but the whole ordinance is new?
So,
Or-
yeah, and the way that we'll present these is if we make changes in a section, it'll be underlined and that shows up in red. But the section 2 is just creating additional language to
And
put
so
in.
that's all brand new?
That's
not
all
edited.
brand new.
Got it.
That
Thank
portion.
you. Thank you, no need to, I'm with you now. Thank you.
Track changes confuse me too.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 04-2023 regarding amending chapter 239 canvassers and transient merchants as written.
Second.
Motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, we have discuss and consider resolution 2023-11, recognizing June as LGBTQI plus Pride Month.
I prepared the resolution because I think it's important that community knows that all are welcome here and Cottage Grove is a place for everyone. So I used some language that I think some of our neighbors wrote very nicely for this resolution.
Make a motion to approve the resolution 2023-11 regarding recognizing June as LGBTQI plus Pride Month, as written.
Second.
We have a motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next then, discuss and consider resolution 2023-12, recognizing Juneteenth in the village of Cottage Grove.
This was another resolution. I was really into resolutions this month because I think there's some important dates that we need to recognize, including Juneteenth today, to recognize our history and the work that we've done and still needs to be done in our community and across the nation.
Any questions, comments, or a motion?
Make a motion to approve resolution 2023-12 regarding recognizing Juneteenth in the village of Cottage Grove, as written.
Second.
Motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next then, we have discuss and consider temporary Class B fermented malt beverages and a Class B wine license for the Cottage Grove Lions Club for the Taste of Cottage Grove event on July 17th, 2023.
So this is just a temporary alcohol license for that one-day event, which is allowable to bona fide clubs that apply for it, and it's for the Taste of Cottage Grove event. And background checks are done on the members, and that was all cleared by the PD, so it's pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary Class B fermented malt beverage and Class B wine licenses for the Cottage Grove Lions Club for the Taste of Cottage Grove on July 17th, 2023.
Second.
I think David got it. It's my ear, that one caught it. That was close. But let Lisa decide. All right, any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next then, we'll slide right down to reports from village boards, commissions, committees, starting with Public Works, Properties and Sustainability. Heidi?
Yep, I'll start out, and Chris and Brian and JJ, feel free to add as needed. So we met on Tuesday, June 6th, and we heard a little bit about the delay in some of the supplies for solar panels on MSB. Expecting August, but we'll keep you posted on when everything will be operational. It's kind of just waiting on one last piece that's been delayed. So then we had a lengthy discussion about a piece of property locked land that was dedicated to the public in the Foreston neighborhood between Main Street and Foreston. It's kind of in the backyards of each of them. There's a small piece of land that backs up to 7 properties in Foreston that was dedicated to the public. There'd kind of been some creep of personal property onto it. There's some storm drain easements that need to be cleared there. So working through some options with the residents in the area on how we can maintain that property and the use of it. So it's still kind of a work in progress, but we had a number of residents to come and talk to us about how they'd like to see that property used in the future. So we have a couple options we're working through with legal and staff to figure out the best option for us on that property. And then that was basics of the meeting. We do have a discuss and consider tonight about CDL incentive. So there's a memo in your packet. I don't know, Brian, if you wanted to add anything about that?
It's just
Or
that,
Kelly?
so the reason why it's worded as a discuss is this isn't about going over budget, but changing the wording of the use of the funds. So Brian, I'll let you.
It's basically just eliminating one word, to TWO, to allow staff to work with recruitment of new employees. We're just using existing money in a little bit different manner than we intended through the budget, but for the same purpose.
So we don't actually have to consider anything, it's just to let us know.
Just to kind of have the board direct us if that's, as long as that we're not going over budget, but using it for the same intent, that would be allowable. Just as if any board members had any concerns with that. Yeah, so there's either we hire somebody, we either spend $5,000 to get on the CDL. The way we worded our contracts to employees that actually get the bonus, they would have to work 2 years before they were clear and free. If they quit before a year was up, they would owe us the whole amount back. If they would quit sometime over a year but under a year, they would owe half of that incentive back. So it takes a full 2 years to quote unquote earn that full benefit, but it would be paid out immediately.
Any other questions? Any concerns? Okay.
One last note on Public Works. We will not be meeting in July because our regular meeting would fall on July 4th, so we decided to just go with August, so we'll pick up the Foreston discussion in August.
All right. Thanks, Heidi.
Yep, thank you.
Then we'll move right down to Ad Hoc Architectural Review Committee. We met on June 7th, and the discussion there was signs, actually. One community bank wanted to add a second monument sign because of the way the bank is situated. It's, obviously on Main Street on one end, and then Landmark Drive on the other end. So the purpose of that second sign is really to try to help direct people in that. The other thing is they do have a long driveway to get up to their new building, so that was the other consideration there. The committee approved it, recommended approval to the Plan Commission. So, Brittany, anything else? I think it was pretty.
No, it was really straightforward.
Yeah. Next then, Community Development Authority. Sarah, David?
Sure. Met on, actually, let me pull up the agenda. I thought I had it up, but I don't. We met on Monday, June 12th. Aaron gave an update on the video project that the distillery is working on. They did, Aaron sent a link out after, I couldn't get the link to work, so I'll have to keep trying it. But they're not completely done yet. He sent out a draft. More to come there. Let's see. Then we, the chamber was supposed to come and talk, but Britt was not able to make it that night. Then we talked about discussed updating the economic development chapter of the comp plan. Essentially, the way we're going to start with updating that chapter is through the charts and graphs. So Aaron walked us through kind of some of the updates there. It's really just to refresh the dates in the data is really where it's at right now. More to come from that, but that's really the first step there. Then we talked and approved using university program to assist with the economic development chapter of the comp plan. I think it was unanimous actually. So staff is going to go back and see if university could help us there around the comp plan. Then we continued the budget discussion. In the last couple of years, the CDA has been really interested in updating the website, but there's kind of been some slow traction there. We did hire Gabe, and Gabe kind of did some work, and now JJ's kind of been doing some work there. So what was really interesting that came out of that conversation for me was that since we've had some new members join the CDA, I think things have really shifted more towards surveys and survey methods. Jess Robinson actually said, can we just go talk to university in general and just see, would they be interested in, could they help us not only with the economic development chapter, but is there something they can also do from surveys and websites as well? So essentially we told staff to just go back to university and see what they can and can't help us with, and then come back to the CDA next month. So I think that's, after that, we just kind of talked about future agenda items, set a date, and then we adjourn. So pretty straightforward. Did I miss anything, sir?
All right, then we'll move right to Utility Commission. Chris?
We met last Wednesday, 13. We talked about the meter at the Bryn Mawr on North Main. They're going to need to have that installed, but due to some job vacancies in the Public Works Department right now, that's kind of being put on the back burner. New business, we talked about compensation for remotely attending to a SCADA call. Right now, it's 2 hours of overtime if you have to respond to a call when you're on call. And we're hoping to change it to, if you have to go into a call, it's still 2 hours. If you have to go in physically, it's still 2 hours. But if you are able to address it virtually, you get 1 hour of overtime. We didn't make a decision on that. We're kind of waiting till we get a HR manager to kind of figure out all the compensation stuff. And we had a presentation from Trilogy on the rate cases. It was about 8 slides long, I think. And then we talked about increasing the simplified rate case 8% and the conventional rate case 32%. That would go to needed capital improvements like well 2. And then we talked about the 2022 compliance maintenance annual report, which JJ seemed very happy to only have to do that this last time before he can hand it off to Brian next year. We got an A on that, so good job everybody for that. Engineer reports, main thing is they're still working on getting the second dip at Authentics fixed. Director's report was just talking about staff recruitment. Future agenda items, Charlie, the chair, wanted to add an agenda item to talk about doing rate changes more frequently so that we're not doing it every 5 years and seeing a big bump like we may see this year. And maybe wrap that into the 2024 budget. And then we set the next meeting for July 12th, and we adjourned.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Then we'll move to Plan Commission. Heidi?
Thanks. So we met also on June 14th, a little bit later at 6:30. And the first item on our agenda is also an item we have on our agenda. It's for a new business, Dippin' Dog Daycare, doggy daycare on Progress Drive. And we held a public hearing and talked about the conditional use permit application for that business. We talked a little bit about the site plan. We don't have the site plan in front of us tonight. We need some more, Plan Commission wanted some more information, but we do have the conditional use permit for that. And I thought I saw maybe Todd was on earlier, otherwise I'd turn it over to Aaron to talk about the plan.
Thought I saw Todd as well. There he is.
He's there.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
And I got Travis here as well, who was in the meeting last Wednesday.
At Plan Commission, we had the opportunity to hear a little bit about your business previously when you brought us a concept plan, but maybe just if Todd, if you have a quick highlight on what you're hoping to open there, it'd be great.
Looking to open, like she said, a doggy daycare next to Creative Kids daycare on Progress Drive. Be about 4,500 square feet with an indoor area in the back with fence, 6-foot privacy fence wrapped around the building. But also my business will also have an indoor pool for dogs to be able to rehabilitate and exercise and other ideas as well that I can throw out there.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, so all we're really looking at tonight is the conditional use permit, basically approving the use, and then, as Heidi said, we'll come back next month with the site plan when they have a little bit more detail on it. Commercial animal boarding is always a conditional use, including in this case where it's in the planned industrial district. Staff didn't have any concerns, the Plan Commission didn't have any concerns about the use. I think it's a pretty good spot for it. The only real concern might be noise, but there's a daycare next door that, kids are probably as noisy as the dogs. Got a wooded hill behind it that's going to block a lot of noise. The business on the other side, the workers are mostly in the field. It's a boiler repair place. And then across the street, it's the mini warehouses that aren't really occupied either. So good business and a good spot, and it's been a hard parcel to fill. It's been sitting empty for a long time. So that was my question. Yes. Just those going away.
Let's pretend that didn't.
And the answer, Aaron, was that they would be moved?
Yes. Andrew Homburg allowed him to be there. I think it's the people who are.
And just to confirm, by approving this conditional use, it's just for this particular site, right?
Yeah.
And this particular business?
This business at this location.
This use, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit to conduct a commercial animal boarding land on parcel number 07111622161, located immediately east of 400 Progress Drive.
Second.
We have a motion and a second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay. I didn't get that far, but.
Just making sure.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Thank you.
So-
Motion carries.
So then we will have more information next month about the site plan details. We also discussed the variance for the second ground-mounted sign for One Community Bank. I'm not sure, it's not discuss and consider on our agenda tonight, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so with the ordinance is written, it only has to go to the Plan Commission. It used to be that every sign permit went to the Plan Commission, and when it became just a staff thing, just goes to the Plan Commission when there's something unusual about it, but it didn't have to go here.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. So then One Community Bank, as John mentioned earlier from Architectural Review, would have the second sign to help people navigate around the site. And then we also discussed parking requirements as part of kind of our analysis of looking at the requirements for the housing study and looking at parking requirements for residential and non-residential uses. Our parking requirements kind of fall in the middle, so it didn't seem like there was going to be a whole lot changed with that. There's some nice charts that Aaron put together on, where we fall with our parking requirements. A lot of places are reducing parking requirements to try and promote people to use alternate transportation. It reduces costs for housing, and some people have fewer cars than they used to. So it's kind of a changing world, but we still fall pretty well in the middle on most everything. So we'll move on to more items that were recommended from the housing study and future plan commission meetings. And then we adjourned until our July meeting.
Thanks, Heidi. Next then, we'll move down to Deer Grove EMS Commission. There is a discuss and consider item here, but I'll run through the meeting quick, and then Brittany or Chief will correct me if I missed anything or didn't highlight anything. So met on June 15th, actually met at the Deerfield Village Hall, brand new facility over in Deerfield, replacing a very, very historic building. So very nice to see that facility. We actually got a quick tour, which was nice to see what they put together over there. Covered the usual items, meeting minutes from prior meeting, financials all approved, bills approved, write-offs and aging accounts, no write-offs. Then I moved right into staff report, where Chief always puts together a good summary along with Assistant Chief. Items highlighted there, again, the calls are continuing to go up this year between all the communities. Talked a little bit about vehicle maintenance, which leads into the item that we'll cover as a consider. Excuse me. Then talked about the install of the radios, the new radios into the vehicles as well, which is great to hear and see. Then touched on some of the training items that the staff goes through, went through kind of some training sessions. Wanted to highlight real quick just the grant that the Deer Grove EMS did receive for the Narcan Leave Behind program. This was awarded to Deer Grove. Again, the scenario is that you go to a situation where you have to use Narcan and you leave one behind for those folks, just in case, unfortunately, they have to use them again. And again, that time is very precious for those situations. Then touched on, I'm trying to think what else. Quite a few other things going on. Chief and the rest of the crew were out in full force over Fireman's Festival, I should say, over the weekend as well, so thank you for that. Then the item for discuss and consider really is to kind of get ourselves in line for a new chassis for that, because the lead time is so long. The commitment is, there's no commitment financially. It again just resolves that the communities will raise their hand and get in line for, this would be a 2025 ambulance. And it's the chassis, and then we're putting the old piece back on, which isn't that old, but it's they refurbish it and put it back onto that, and then I think it's a one and done. I think we can do that. Saves the communities a little bit of money, but that's what that particular item is up for discuss and consider this evening. Brittany, anything else? Chief, what did I miss? Since you're here.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I think we ended the meeting on a very productive discussion about potential changes to the IGA that might benefit all communities, and the request to come back here to pass along to the other two municipal partners would be what changes is the village looking to make to that IGA so that it can be made rather than trying to guess. In regard to the ambulance remount, chassis remount is, as you can imagine, is there going to be a discussion about that? So I'll wait to talk about that, I guess.
So sorry, I should have continued on. Yes, there was a good discussion about from the other communities about what the village would like, going forward. Obviously, nothing, that was offered out, and so that's something this board will have to talk about a bit further from that, from the intergovernmental agreement. And then Chief also walked through the request for information, very robust document that he put together with staff to help us, again, get information to make a good decision when it comes to EMS services. So,
Yeah, and I'd suggest that document you got on Thursday, I'd shred that, because there's so many changes it'd confuse you if you're reading between both of them.
okay. So you sent the new one today, so.
Sometimes my grasp of English escapes me, and the fingers do what the fingers want, so.
It's all right. Got it down. Any questions in regards to the resolution, in regards to the ambulance capital purchase?
No question, but just approximately about 152,000 will be the village's share.
Yeah.
And then I read it right that it wouldn't be due until 2025.
Yeah, it would depend on how everything processes through, and those are definitive discussions we'd have with regard to capital budget creations for 2024, and then we wouldn't need to pay for the chassis remount bill until 2025, but it might be in our best interest to attempt to procure the physical vehicle in 2024 with all the horror stories we've heard about folks having a spot in line and then no vehicle to mount it to. But those were intentionally vague on here to leave us that opportunity to discuss it further as we move forward. And I probably should have done those rough calculations for cost and put that on here as well. So thank you, sir.
And then would it be approximately 123,000 for 2014 if it was split? Or we can talk more later once you have the details.
So what I have to go off of is how we did the last vehicle purchase. It was quoted it to us at $245,000. So, and clearly the prices have gone up over the course of years. So we did $100,000 in one year and $145,000 in the next. Unfortunately, because of chassis procurement, all of the real purchases happened in 1 year, even though we intended to have them over 2 years. But if we don't have the funds to attempt to order a vehicle in 2024, we can't take delivery of just the chassis portion without those funds. So this is stuff that we can work out definitively. What the resolution allows us to do is put ourselves in line so that we know that we'll be able to take a vehicle delivery sometime towards the end of 2025. The longer we wait, the more likely that it will be to not happen for us.
A couple questions. What's the life, when it's remounted, how long is it good for?
We're shooting for 9-year replacement cycles on our vehicles. After 9 years, we would guess we have never had these vehicles for 9 years, nor run these amounts of calls with them. For instance, the vehicle we're going to replace is already in the 150,000 mile range, and we have to keep it for 2 more years. So we would suspect that's going to be in the 170s, the 180s for thousands of miles. So the 9-year replacement cycle seems to fit in, and then it also cycles in a vehicle every 3 years for us. We talked about that we would only remount the box once. Think about the box at the end of the replacement cycle would be 18 years old. There's certain things that we just can't guarantee with a box that's old, between metal fatigue and wear and tear overall on the vehicle. So the way the cycle will work is that when we replace Medic 80, the one that we'll replace, it will be 8 years old. It was purchased in 2017. Its sister ambulance, Medic 78, will be replaced in 2028, but it will be 11 years old. So because of having 2 vehicles purchased together and not wanting to place that burden on our communities again to recreate that, we know that one is going to be a little young when we replace it and one's going to be a little old. The guiding factor for our vehicle replacement is the insurance. So when we insure it, it's 100% vehicle replacement up to 10 years old.
Okay. Next question is about the, where it says the order can be canceled without penalty. Do you know what the lead time is from, let's say, today to when the order would start? And I guess, I think maybe this question really it just goes to the RFP, is that, should we be making a decision about that before we do this? Or do we have time between now and when the vehicle production starts to be able to make that decision and cancel it if necessary?
Yeah, so while we're in comparable situations with fire truck manufacturing, a vehicle like an ambulance doesn't take as long to manufacture as a fire truck does. So they wouldn't start our production until sometime in 2025.
Okay.
It's just a matter of making sure that we have that spot in line.
Got it. That was it. Thank you.
And that's part of the consideration with this resolution, is that we want to get our place in line, but understanding that there might be hopefully no change, but might be some change to our makeup soon, so that we would need to plan for that, and if necessary, we would cancel without penalty. So that's why that information is in there.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve Deer Grove EMS Commission Resolution 2023-01-06-1523 regarding ambulance capital purchase.
There's motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor? Oh,
I was just looking at the agenda. Was this approved at the,
yes.
Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks for asking, David.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Thanks, Chief.
No, it's an inside joke. I passed it out for everyone to see at the meeting on Thursday, and John kind of preemptively signed it, so now today's official.
Shame on me.
I'm not a lawyer, but.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, then we move down to reports from village officers. Village Attorney, Larry. What's that? Oh, okay, thank you. I thought you said take some time. I'm like, for what? Nobody wants to be here longer. All right, then we'll move to communications and miscellaneous business, starting off with the approval of vouchers, or consideration and approval of vouchers. Any questions, comments in regards to the vouchers as presented?
Make a motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
Second.
Motion and second then. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Correspondence, I didn't have any. I don't know if anybody else had some. All right, then upcoming community events. Now we're into summer. I jotted down that July 6th is again a Music in the Grove evening. And then Market Days on July 15th. And I think there's a brat fry coming up for the Historical Society this week, I believe. It's advertised in front of the pig.
I had a question about the marketplace day. Will we have a booth again this year? Would you be hoping to have any trustees, or would you at the booth helping out, or are we going to be?
We'll post for a possible quorum, and
okay.
Yeah, anyone and everyone is welcome. So we'll have staff kind of signed up, so we have at least a couple there throughout. So we'll have time slots, but unless you guys want to actually sign up, you can just come anytime you want.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Any other upcoming community events anybody wants to highlight?
It's not really a community event, but there's a blood drive at Flynn Hall on July 10th.
Thank you, Chris. And then I just wanted to give a shout out for the firefighters and volunteers and all the folks that were involved in the Fireman's Festival over the weekend, particularly as well as staff. It really came off very flawlessly from what I saw. And again, I only saw snippets here and there, and then did have a chat with the chief and the EMS folks. So,
What wasn't flawless, John, was me trying to get into the kiddie train with my kiddos. They wouldn't go on by themselves, so
Oh.
I did eventually get in, but I couldn't get in the car that they wanted me to get into.
I know. We're all big kids at heart, right? Yeah, but it really was nice to see, a nice community event. So just wanted to give a shout out there. Future agenda items. Matt, anything you have, or Aaron, or future?
It's a month away. It'll be loaded, but
Yeah,
I don't really have any specifics right now.
Yeah.
And we'll have the prioritization, a comprehensive list, and we can discuss that some more.
Okay.
You may get questions, as Chris mentioned before, the Utility Commission approved for us to apply for a flat 8% increase for water. So you may get questions from residents. That's basically just a simplified study, taking what we can now and waiting for the full rate case study to set in. So that was submitted on Monday, or today.
I'm sure those conversations will be fun. All right, then I will make a motion that we go into closed session. Closed session regarding the potential land acquisition in TID number 9 and establishing negotiating position. The Village of Cottage Grove Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating, negotiating the purchasing of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
And we will do a roll call. Lisa, please.
Ballwig.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
Peterson.
Aye.
Stoa.
Yes.
Valencia. Aye. Williams.
Aye.
Whittick.
Aye.
And then I will make a second motion to go into closed session. This is a closed session regarding TID number 10, development agreement negotiations. The Village of Cottage Grove Village Board will enter a closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, parentheses 1, parentheses E, deliberating and negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing in public funds, conducting other specified public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Whittick. Williams.
Aye.
Valencia. Stoa.
Yes.
Peterson.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
And Ballwig.
Aye.
Recording stopped.
Haley. Convene to open session. Any possible consideration for closed session items?
I'm going to make a motion to approve the purchase of 101 East Cottage Grove Road in Cottage Grove, Wisconsin, as drafted.
Second.
Motion and second then. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Slide.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, dude.
You waited too long.
We have first by Heidi. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brittany. On non-debatable, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.